Yes, hello everyone. Fáilte Rash Goody Cúilín Media. Welcome back to another episode here. Episode number 9, would you believe already, Aaron, of Cúilín Media. And myself, yourself, Matthew and Liam came together to create this. We've already got 8 episodes in the book and now we're ready for episode number 9. Apologies to anybody who was waiting for the pod to start at 8 o'clock. You had some delays, of course. Aaron, do you want to, was it the protest or traffic was a bit crazy getting home?
Yeah, there was an old protest in the Dublin city centre, so I think like the Port Tunnel was like closed off, and I work like close to East Point Business Park, so yeah, bit manic, bit crazy, lots of trucks driving around everywhere as well, so I also had to try and make sure I don't get fucking run over, but look, we made it back in one piece, and looking forward to the weekend's games. Like there's some very interesting games. You obviously have the Dublin ladies final. You've got the Clare senior hurling final, the Wicklow football final as well, and a couple of other cracking like semi-finals, quarter-finals. Looking forward to cracking into it, man.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to jumping into this. And obviously, goes without saying that with the protest, anything that's pro-Palestine, we're fully behind it. All four of us and Cúilín Media and everything like that. So couldn't give a fuck about them setting up the, things to be, bothered and everything like that. I'm fully behind them. So fully behind the protest. We're going to split this into 2 sections. We're going to split this into GA news. We're going to recap the news that we've seen since Sunday's episode that Matthew and Liam took, but Matthew and Liam unfortunately won't be with us in this episode. It is myself and Aaron on this time. We've tagged in for the 2 of them. We're going to do the first half hour just purely on GA news that has happened since Sunday, and then the next half hour on the club action that is coming up this weekend. As Aaron touched on, we've got the Clare hurling final, we've got the Dublin LGFA final, we've got some huge clashes across the country. And if you are tuning in live, please do drop in what are the games you're looking forward to, which ones should we keep an eye out for, which ones might we have missed in our discussions. But let's jump in with the first part of the show, which is the GA news recap. And this is obviously since Sunday. I'm going to go chronologically through kind of the headlines and everything like that. The first one, interestingly, goes back to the Ulster final of this year's championship when Armagh and Donegal had the scuffle at the end. It's interestingly, it's come out only now on Monday. They've both been fined 7,500 euros each for that brawl. Well, interestingly, what's your first take when you heard that?
Yeah, I don't know, like if there was some sort of like damage control put in place and both counties maybe came to an agreement that let's not let this get out to affect the players and the talk around each of them kind of going later into the championship and everything else. I think it's I think all these brawls keep happening, and we've said lots of times like there isn't enough punishment, or it's very hard to punish individual players because it's very hard to just send 3-4 players off of each team. Do you know what I mean? It's very hard for the referees to see it, for officials to see it. So I do think the right way to lay down the law is by punishing the counties. Do you know what I mean? And I think ultimately, like because, and I know I did see some Armagh and Donegal fans kind of say, oh well, it didn't happen in the past, and what about Tyrone and Dublin and all these other kind of what abouts. And look, back then if there had been fines, that 100% would have been agreed. No one would have had any disputes. But I think you want these brawls and all this stuff to stop. And look, ultimately, if county boards are getting fined, they'll probably lay down the law a little bit, and that will pass down to the players that not to be getting involved. Look, I know there's always going to be a bit of afters, and obviously there's always going to be a little bits of handbags and everything else, but in terms of anything serious, like we are seeing scenarios at the moment with fans and everything else, and look, I know that's a different problem in many ways. That's probably more of like a societal problem, but at the same time we want to try and nip that kind of stuff in the bud, because it does set a bit of a example to the younger players, kids and everything else might see that on the TV and think like that's look at these Armagh players who they follow and worship, and they're getting involved in this. So maybe when they play a club game, they might do something like that as well. So, I think it's good they came down on it, and hopefully it can, they can nip it in the bud a bit more now, kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think like, I've seen a lot of people get annoyed about the fact that Armagh Donegal were fined for the scenes at the end of the Ulster final. I think one of the key things that you have to remember, and you pointed out really well, Aaron, is that we've seen it transcend from the players into the crowd at club level. We haven't really very, very high profile incident of it at the inter-county level yet, but the Ulster final was as close as I've seen, because full-time whistle went. There was a scrap going on in the middle of the pitch as the fans were running in. And all you need is someone who's a bit locked, who fancies himself as a bit of a scrapper to want to get involved. And now all of a sudden you have a situation where the players are fighting the fans. So they got away with one there in the Ulster final, and they have to make sure that they do not let it get to that stage again. And you said it right there. When there's so many people involved, it's hard to suspend an individual player when there's about 15 of them involved. So you need to come down on the county boards then, because then they'll go down on the players themselves. You need to go down on, so you need to clamp down on the county board, because they then in turn will crack down on the players that they know are probably leading the charge with this type of stuff. And we'll see less of this happening, because we've seen it at club level. That was very close to seeing it at inter-county level. So little small story there, but I think the GAA have handled it right. They didn't react to it impulsively. They took their time with it, and I think the right thing was done there. Interestingly, neither McGeeney or McGuinness haven't seen either of them comment on it. So I think that tells me that they're probably happy to just put this in the rear view mirror as well. Another interesting story, Ger Manley staying on as Cork Camogie boss. Obviously, Cork winning the All-Ireland Championship in his first year in charge, but they fell short of doing the 3 in a row, something that is such a historic feat, would have been such a historic feat if he had achieved it with that Cork team. I mean, the last team to do 3 in a row was the Wexford team of Ursula Jacob in 2012. It hasn't been done in quite a while. Him staying on as Cork boss indicates to me there's a bit of unfinished business there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I think it's always been a difficult one for Cork Camogie, like, because they've been so, like, you look at last year up until the final, they were so dominant, beating teams left, right, and centre at a canter, really, like not getting much of a test. And I think they were just caught cold really by Galway, obviously going down to 14 and everything else that kind of went with it. But yeah, no, I think it's a good decision that Manly stays on. Like, I think, look, they'll still be, it'd be interesting to see whether they be favourites next year. I know maybe some Galway fans might have some disagreement in regards to that. Galway obviously in the year previous gave a good account of themselves in the final as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. But I think, look, Cork are a phenomenal team, phenomenal players across the board, and obviously didn't win it this year, but won it the 2 previous. So I think while you have a manager like that, you have the players still there. Like, I think the last thing you want is a bit of disruption. A manager leaves and maybe some players think, all right, maybe it's my time to go as well. And that can kind of disrupt the flow. Like, they're still, they're still going to win more All-Irelands over the next couple of years. They mightn't win it every year, but they're going to be thereabouts. And this definitely gives them the best chance at retaining that, definitely.
Yeah, like, it's definitely an unpopular opinion to say this, but I still think, like, Galway were phenomenal on the day of the final, and they absolutely deserved their win. But I still think if you were to play that game again 10 times, I think Cork would win 7 times. Like, they blitzed everyone on their way to the final. I think Galway just got one of those days where they got Cork a little bit off colour. Cork were still hanging in there, but still things went right for Galway in terms of the free landed to Carrie Dolan and things like that. And Cork didn't manage to kick on at the end after getting the goal from Orla Cahalan. So there's interesting moments. Cork missed that window to make it 3 in a row. I'm be interested to see just how ambitious is Ger Manley in staying on. Does he want to just win this year, put that to right, and maybe leave? Or is this Jim Gavin style where, he loses in 2014 and then he wants to do 5 in a row, which he ended up doing? So interesting to see where exactly Ger Manley's term will end now, because when you stick around after a bad result, it means that you either want to go out on a high or you genuinely want to make a legacy with this team. And I think Cork have a good enough team to do it. So it will be interesting to see. Now, this story broke, I believe on Wednesday, so it only broke yesterday. But yesterday morning, the discussion of the inter-county rules, the new F4C rules, they're going to Congress this weekend. They'll be voted on at the GAA Special Congress this weekend. I cannot stress how much I'm hoping that they just leave the rules as they are. Like, I cannot stress how much I am praying that they leave the rules as they are and don't head backwards towards what the game was in 2024, 2023 and beyond. 94% of inter-county players have said that they are enjoying football more under the new rules. So it's being voted on at the Special Congress this weekend. I beg, please don't take a step backwards here. Listen to the players. They are the ones who are playing the game, and 94% of them saying that they enjoy the game more now. You got to listen to that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think it's important as well that they don't also, I know there's talks about like 4 points for a goal and, you know, different things like that maybe coming in. Like obviously like a shot clock as well to sort of stop the side where it's passing and everything else. But I probably would just leave it as it is, to be honest with you. I think we had the perfect balance last year. I know there are some arguments maybe that there were at times a lot of kind of one-sided games, and it did kind of happen a little bit towards the end of the inter-county football season with the final a little bit. Obviously the semis as well were a little bit kind of one-sided as well. I think, you know, that's obviously 1 year, so like it's one kind of sample that you look at. I think you keep the same for next year, and you know, obviously this year we had Meath getting to a semi-final, which maybe they overachieved a little bit as an example, and sort of getting to where they got to, you know, and obviously it ended up being a very comfortable win. But yeah, like I think keep it as it is. Let more teams and more players, more managers adapt to the rules, because let's not forget as well, like there was a lot of figuring things out with these new rules as well. A lot of teams probably didn't adapt to the new rules, like the likes of Dublin, the likes of Mayo. So I think changing too much again would put people off. You've seen even confusion around referees as well at the start of the league, and there was kind of things that were going wrong. So I think hopefully they can, they can just keep it as it is, and like and then we kind of just move on and look forward to next year.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Like, it was just so much more enjoyable. Like, just going to the games. I mean, myself and yourself, I think the example that me and you have always picked is that Dublin Roscommon game in Croke Park, which was just absolutely so boring a couple of years ago. And the game has leveled up since then. Every game that was being played, there was, you know, you pick at 2-pointers and everything like this, and the amount of space. We got to see the best players in Ireland this year play at the best of their level. Players like David Clifford, Michael Murphy, they were given the space in order to strut their stuff and do their thing. And that's why you pay in, isn't it? Like, that's why you pay your ticket. That's why you buy yourself into the stadium, to see the masters at work. You don't want to see David Clifford with 3 defenders on him blocking down the space, and then, you know, a genius doesn't get to showcase their craft. You want to see something like what we saw in the 2022 All-Ireland final, where you had Shane Walsh at one end and David Clifford at one end, 2 wizards, you know, carrying the forward line for their teams. And that game was a superb example of, you know, a bit of an exception in what the old rules were offering us over the last 5 years, because most of the games were defensive. And the further down the divisions you went, where you didn't have, you know, the David Cliffords and everything like that, the more defensive and keep ball it was, and the more methodical every play was. Whereas now we're seeing, you know, teams like Offaly playing superb football under these new rules. You know, teams like Meath have really shot up now with these new rules and obviously made it to the semi-finals. So we're seeing a lot of progress. I would be hopeful, like you, that we keep what we had last year, because I think it genuinely was perfect. Interestingly as well, speaking of talent, there's no question about it. This guy always had talent, but Daniel Flynn has announced his inter-county retirement. I think, as a Dublin fan, I would say that you probably remember this as well. His point against Dublin in 2017, I think it was, where he was like on the sideline and he hit it outside of the boot over the bar. I remember his goal as well in the Leinster final of 2021, where he ran past about 7 Dublin defenders and stuck it in the top corner. There was no question about it. This guy had an abundance of talent. Like, he had an unbelievable level of talent. But as he retires, I feel like we could have seen an awful lot more of him. He was in and out of the Kildare team. You know, there were years where he wasn't there, and then sometimes he'd be, you know, coming in off the bench or playing a corner forward, and you wouldn't see that much of him, and then he'd be gone. But when he was at his best, he was an exceptional footballer. And, yeah, I'm glad I got to see him play because in terms of pure talent, like, I mean, it kind of reminds me almost of like Hatem Ben Arfa or someone like that. That like,
yeah,
when he was at his best, he was unbelievable. But unfortunately, that peak was a little bit too short.
Yeah, like he's one of them players that probably in 10 years' time, like, you know, when they say like the streets will remember kind of type players,
Yeah.
I feel like Daniel Flynn is definitely one of them. He did have a lot of injury problems, I think, over the last couple of years. He was playing in the AFL for a while as well, wasn't he? So he's obviously, you know, he's had a couple of injury issues, a couple of knocks. He has been in now. I agree with you as well. I think like there definitely would have been a part for him to play next year, and I think given the fact that Dublin obviously didn't win the Leinster title last year, it does feel like Dublin can be gotten at more now. And obviously we'll see with Jared Brennan coming in next year how things go for Dublin in Leinster over the next couple of years. But he would have been a fantastic player, I think, to bring off the bench, you know, with 10, 15 minutes to go. Look, maybe he's had injuries and maybe he's been, you know, he kind of knows he kind of has been coming off the bench sort of last year. Maybe he doesn't want to be that type of player. He wants to play football, and if he's not going to be playing regularly, then maybe he just wants to step away. But look, only he knows. At the end of the day, might want to go traveling or something like that as well. He's obviously been around the block for a long time. He's given so much to Kildare as well. So it's probably one of them where the timing's maybe a little bit unfortunate, because I think there is, you know, I do have a funny feeling there could be a Leinster title coming the way of Kildare. Possibly, you know, I feel like it could move around now over the next couple of years potentially. And I think Kildare are one of the teams that could be in the mix. So the timing's probably a little bit unfortunate from his perspective. But yeah, phenomenal player. Yeah, the point kind of near the Hogan stand 2017. That was, yeah, outside of the boot. Extraordinary. The goal as well. Some other moments as well. I remember even in the game in 23, I think he came off the bench and I think there was a couple of minutes to go, and I think the linesman called it for the ball going over the sideline. And I remember I was on the hill. It didn't go over the sideline. That was the one that Glenn Ryan went kind of crazy about and was giving out about. But even then, Kildare were on for a goal there. Like he cut through like 2-3 players. And even in that kind of brief moment, you were kind of reminded, like, oh yeah, I forget how good this guy is. But yeah, no, it's a big loss for Kildare. But look, they do have plenty of young talent coming through as well, to be fair.
They do. There's no question about it. Like, the competition for places is very, very strong in the Kildare team right now. Obviously, Tailteann Cup winners. And I do think, like, you look at the Leinster Championship, I think we might be entering a period kind of similar to post-95, where Dublin had won an All-Ireland, but we're about to slip into a little bit of a dip. I think, look, hiring Jared Brennan, it could be the perfect antidote to the downward trajectory that we have right now. But, you know, when you look back, I don't mean to sidetrack this to Dublin's too much, but you look at, like, I mean, I read the book about the gap between 95 to 2011. Malachy Clerkin wrote it, and he was like, Mickey Whelan was the perfect man. Everybody at the time was saying Mickey Whelan is exactly the guy that you would have wanted managing Dublin after Pat O'Neill walked away after 95. And Mickey Whelan came in and couldn't change the trajectory of where the team was going. The players just weren't quite at the same level as they had been in previous years. And maybe we could see a case of that again. I hope not, from a Dublin point of view. But what happened when that downward trajectory happened with Dublin was Meath rose up and, you know, dominated, won 2 All-Irelands in 96 and 99. Kildare made the final in 98. Westmeath won Leinster in 2004. Laois won it in 2003. Dublin came back and won it in 2002 and then 2005. And Offaly also won one in 97. But we saw about 6 years in a row where a different winner every year was crowned. So hopefully the Leinster Championship can kind of head back into that, where we see just an absolutely superb competition that it once was in the late 90s, early 2000s, where you could not pick who was going to win the championship, and whoever won it had earned it through tears, sweat and blood. Like, it was so it'll be interesting to see if it goes that way. But yeah, as Daniel Flynn retires, I think he goes down as one of those players that the streets won't forget. If you saw that point against Dublin in 2018 from the sideline, if you saw that goal against Dublin in the Leinster final where he went past about 7 players, if you saw that point from the sideline that he kicked outside of the boot, he goes down as one of those streets won't forget players. who else would you think goes down as a Streets Won't Forget player off the top of your head?
Ooh. Matty Ford just jumped out there for some reason. I think he's probably a level above that though, a little bit as well. Do you know what I mean? Like I think he's a phenomenal.
Well, Ford was amazing, but I feel like because he was playing for a county that wasn't competing regularly, I'd look maybe somewhere on that Wexford team, maybe even someone like Kieran Ling from that Wexford team, who was just awesome. His left boot was unreal, whereas Matty Ford did get most of the credit.
Even Ben Brosnan as well, to be fair. I know he's still going. But even in that 2011 Leinster final, like he was incredible that day. Trying to think of other players now who kind of like Stephen Bray was very good for Meath. He was very good. Obviously you had Geraghty and Sheridan, but like Stephen Bray, I think was one who who didn't get mentioned maybe enough. JP Rooney of Loud, even like kind of keeping on the Loud, or the Leinster track. He was kind of another one as well from all around that kind of similar time period. It's hard to kind of think of one for Dublin, but there was, I don't know if you remember Shane Ryan, who played for the Hurlers as well. Yeah, he was he wasn't kind of like a forward now, like he was kind of more around the middle, but he was more like a kind of like your real old school, no nonsense kind of type footballer. And I feel like he's one who doesn't often get mentioned enough, I think, when it comes to conversations about Dublin football,
He was a super midfielder, like just pure power. But from a Dublin perspective, Streets Won't Forget. It is kind of difficult to actually pick someone who's like the Streets Won't Forget type. I think maybe Mark Vaughan that one year in like 2007, where he was kicking frees from everywhere. But
Owen O'Gara maybe as well. He doesn't really kind of get put in the same bracket, doesn't he, of like your Connollys and Brogans and things like that,
O'Gara, when he could keep his head, he can get sent off. For me, I think the biggest street. What the fuck is happening to my voice? Anyway, for me, the biggest Streets Won't Forget player in terms of just pure talent, Marty Clark. Like, oh my God, when that fella was an absolute peak ability, 2010, just off that left boot, the way he could string the play together, he was absolutely unbelievable. Didn't spend his entire, prime playing for Down, but in 2010, he was just absolutely unmarkable, unplayable. And for me, that's my biggest one. That's my biggest Streets Won't Forget player. I think you can look at like players potentially like Emlyn Mulligan. Like Emlyn Mulligan was absolutely unbelievable for Leitrim. There's a lot of good shouts there. Declan Brown as well from Tipperary, I thought was unbelievable. Won an All-Star with Tipperary in 2003 when they were getting nowhere near the All-Ireland. So, I mean, what does that tell you about how good he was? And we actually have a third member. I didn't think Liam would be with us, but lo and behold.
There we go.
Liam, welcome to the chat. We're just talking about who the Streets Won't Forget, given now that Daniel Flynn is retired. Who to you jumps out? We're saying he's a Streets Won't Forget type player. Who jumps out to you as being a Streets Won't Forget type player?
Jesus, yeah. I mean, Daniel Flynn, first of all, before I even mentioned that, like I loved watching him play whenever he was on the field. Like, I can imagine you probably referenced the goal that he got against Dublin, the point he got from near the sideline, some of the scores he got. I've seen him once or twice playing against Offaly with Kildare, and he was one player that I was always absolutely terrified about. Great player for Kildare, and we wish him all the best of luck in his retirement. Streets Won't Forget player. Jesus. I could be biased from an Offaly point of view, but Niall McNamee could be a player that stands out. Still going strong for Road in the club football scene at the right old age of 600. I know I'm joking. But yeah, no, players like that. Shane Ryan could be a player as well. That could be a big shout out as well. Let me think. Jesus, yeah. Players won't forget. Streets won't forget players. Would it be wrong? No, I was gonna say Diarmuid Connolly, but yeah, nobody will forget him. I'm only saying that because I wish
the skill. Yeah.
No, it's only I wish we saw more of him in his career, but the Streets definitely won't forget him anyway. But yeah, no, he is. Daniel Flynn is probably the perfect description of that type of player. Great player on his day. Whenever he was on form, he'd take on 6-7 players and pop the ball over the bar like it's nobody's business. But it's nice in a way that he got to end his career with something to win with Kildare. You know, he got to win the Tailteann Cup. But I'm not too sorry to see him retired, so we won't have to play against him anytime soon. But great player for Kildare.
Yeah, no, he certainly was. And that brings an end to the GA News segment of the pod. We've run through all the news. It's a bit of a quiet week in terms of the GA. We don't have too much to discuss. Dublin is Great comes in with a question to kick us on nicely to the club section. He says, who do you think will win the Dublin semi-finals? On Sunday, of course, they are a doubleheader live on Dubs TV. We're going to jump in now and give the games a little preview. Aaron, just in general, before we move on, what have you made of the Dublin Championship so far this year?
I think it's been predictable in some ways. I think it is. I think there is I've seen someone on Twitter even say it is kind of the same clubs getting to the semi-finals in hurling football, and even in like ladies football as well. Like you've Kilmacud Crokes in there as well. Like there is kind of like a few clubs at the moment who are just very, very dominant. And it seems quite hard for the other clubs to make up the ground. Like I think you have like a top 4 probably clubs in the country right now. You know, like, and that's Ballybowden, Cúilín, Na Fianna, and Kilmacud Crokes, and it feels like everyone else is trying to, you know, kind of catch up. Like you've obviously got Luke and Sarsfields in hurling who are doing all right and everything else. But look, yeah, like there has been some very interesting games. Like there has been some cracking games. To be fair, but I think up until this weekend now is where it will really kind of kick into gear. I think a lot of the other games, like Na Fianna Ballymun was a great game. Don't get me wrong. Like Na Fianna clawing back an 11 point deficit, but like Crokes cruising through the quarters, very, very comfortably. Cúilín obviously the same as well. But this weekend, I think with Crokes Na Fianna and Ballybowden versus Cúilín, like I think we're gonna have some 2 cracking encounters, and looking forward to getting into them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They are the 2 semi-finals. Ballybowden St. Enda's against Cúilín, followed up by Na Fianna against Kilmacud Crokes. It's just going to be unbelievable watching it. But you are right. There is very clearly now, I personally think that Kilmacud Crokes are going to beat Na Fianna. I actually think they're going to beat them surprisingly easy. I really do. Like I think you look at how Ballybowden beat Na Fianna in round 1, 4-23 to 3-9. Now I know that every game is different, but you watch how Kilmacud have just torched everyone around them. I get Na Fianna could make this difficult for Crokes, and do you know what? I do kind of take back what I said about them winning easy, but I do still think that Crokes will win. I think that Na Fianna can make it difficult for them. You look at the players that they have, the likes of Owen Merchant, the likes of Keelan Sexton and their forwards, they can cause them problems as well. But I strongly believe that nothing will stop Kilmacud getting to the final. The other side is where it's interesting, because Cúilín obviously defending champions, but they haven't been pushed to go to the well yet. Like Lucan did well against them for a half, then Cúilín came away and absolutely blew them out of the water in the second half. But they haven't been forced to go to the well the way that they were forced to go to the well, you know, multiple times along their journey to the All-Ireland last year. Ballybowden are hungry. There's actually not that many players left in the Ballybowden team from their All-Ireland winning days. Like, obviously, you still have Colin Basquel there. But, like, Robbie McDade isn't playing this year. Paul Durkin, who was the goalkeeper that year, he's long gone. Like, players who were crucial to that team, like Bob Dewan, Michael Darren McCauley, they're not playing anymore. This is a very new Ballybowden St. Enda's team. And I actually think they definitely will have more hunger than Cúilín will to get this win. I strongly believe that. It's just a question of, are Cúilín still too good to be dethroned? But you look at how Ballybowden have absolutely annihilated teams in their path, including Na Fianna. It's really, really hard to say that Bowden won't do it. But yeah, just then the last time they played Kilmacud, they got absolutely wiped in the final. So it's difficult, man. It's really difficult. Let's start. We're going for the neutral first. Let's start. We're going with the man who probably couldn't give less of a fuck who comes out with the Dublin Championship. We're going to you, Liam. But Ballybowden St. Enda's versus... Actually, no. You know what? We'll go with Na Fianna Kilmacud Crokes first, because I do think that's a little bit easier to call. I think we're all going for Crokes to win. But then the question is, can Na Fianna beat them? And if so, how?
Look, without sugarcoating it, I think Kilmacud will win this game, and it's no disrespect to Na Fianna. I just think Kilmacud Crokes, after the way they lost the final last year, they were All-Ireland champions just a couple of years ago as well. I still think they're probably maybe the strongest side in the Dublin Championship, but I wouldn't be writing off Na Fianna just yet. You don't. I think it'd be very wrong to overwrite a team that came back from 11 points down in a quarter final. You know, the momentum you can gain from that, the joy you can gain from that. I can imagine training over the last couple of weeks must have been like Disneyland in a way, because you know when you're being, what was it, 113 to 5 points at halftime, or 4 point, doing the maths in my head now, 113 to 5 points, yeah, like, you know, you could be down and out after that, but the courage that they showed in the second half to come back and turn the game around, like you mentioned there, Keelan Sexton was on fire in that game. David O'Hanlon had a solid game in goals. You know, like players like these stood up massively for Na Fianna the last day. And if they can step up again, once again this weekend, and put it up to Kilmacud Crokes, then honestly, you honestly never know. Now, look, do I see them beating Kilmacud Crokes in the end? I don't. I just think Kilmacud Crokes are probably still the strongest side in the Dublin Championship left, bar obviously the two teams on the far side. Like, I feel like the other game probably is a harder one to call, but I certainly wouldn't be writing off Na Fianna just yet. I think any team that's coming back from 11 points down in a quarterfinal, showing that much heart and desire and passion to get themselves back and keep themselves in the championship, has every right to then go forward and have a swing at Kilmacud Crokes. They'll have absolutely no fear of them this weekend whatsoever. But yeah, look, I would probably be sticking to it. I think Kilmacud Crokes should about have enough. With regards Ballyboden and Cúilín, yeah, it's like you mentioned there, Cúilín probably haven't been tested the way you'd hope this year. Look, like Kilmacud Crokes, they both had fairly standard quarterfinals, to be honest. What did they put? 420 past Clontarf, was it the last stage? You know, a huge scoreline to put past them. And then you look at Ballyboden's game, I think it was fairly tame, if I'm led to believe, compared to the other games in the quarterfinals anyways. What was it, 11 points to 1-5 or something like that. But that just shows how good Ballyboden's defence is as well, that they're only conceding 1-5 over the course of 60 minutes. And was it only 2 points or something like that they conceded in the second half as well? Do you know, like that? I think so, yeah. But like, still, it's very, very impressive from them. So I think that one will be a lot closer to call. I still have a feeling though that Cúilín might still have enough to get themselves over the line. But yeah, I think we're in for two very good semi-finals. I think, like you mentioned there, it's probably been a bit predictable so far in the Dublin Championship, as in you've probably expected everything to happen that has happened. But I think we're now at a stage where the four best teams are remaining in the championship. So, but I think it should be good semi-finals this weekend. And John, the thing is, don't be surprised in a way if we ended up with a Na Fianna Ballyboden final. You know, it could just be one of those weird weekends where everything goes wrong. There's meant to be bad weather as well. There's bad weather anyway, but there's meant to be bad weather over the weekend. You never know. Could that play a factor? We'll just have to wait and see.
But that definitely will play a big factor. There's no question about it. Aaron, what do you think with the Na Fianna Crokes game? What are you expecting?
Yeah, I do agree with Liam as well. I think Crokes will come through, but I think this is going to be one of them games where Na Fianna have the chances to win it. Like, you remember when Crokes played Raheny a couple of years ago and it went all the way to penalties, and Raheny had so many chances that day to win that game and ultimately fell short on penalties. I think this is going to be something similar, to be honest. I think Na Fianna are going to have massive chances in this game. I think Crokes are going to be pushed to the pin of their collar. I think one thing we've saw with Na Fianna, not just in the game versus Ballymun, but even in the groups as well, like, they've been brilliant at facing adversity. Do you know what I mean? Like, most teams would fold in their scenarios. And let's not forget as well, this is a team with a group of players who've been to a good couple of county finals in recent years and lost them. Do you know what I mean? So to go to the well and keep on coming back stronger, I know they are a little bit better with Keelan Sexton, obviously, in their team now. He wasn't obviously there a couple of years ago. But yeah, like, I think they've got some phenomenal players there, and I think they definitely can do damage. But I think it's just that Crokes know-how of getting the job done. They have players, as we know, in Manny and Walsh, who can do it on the big occasion. You have the likes of your Dara Mullins and a few others there as well to kind of make an impact. So I think Crokes will come through it, but I do have a funny feeling it's going to go to extra time, and I think it is going to be a lot closer than people think, and it's going to be one of them where Crokes probably end up winning it by 2-3 points. But I think it's a game we'll look back on and think, geez, Na Fianna could have maybe done something there. I've just got a feeling it's going to be one of them type of games.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I'm going to reel up your next answers. So I'd advise, please keep your whole head on the screen. Don't let Liam cut off half your face for this answer. But the two semi-finals this weekend in the go-ahead Dublin Senior Football Championships. You know, what a pair of semi-finals that we have here. Ballybowden St. Enda's against Cúilín, Nafina against Kilmacud Crokes. What final are you expecting now that we have this Final Four?
I'm going to say Kilmacud Crokes and Cúilín. I'm going to stick it out with those two.
Aaron?
I'm going to go with Kilmacud Crokes and Cúilín as well. I know I've got a Ballybowden shirt in the background there. So this is a bit of an awkward one, but I did back Cúilín to win the All-Ireland. So, and I should stress, I'm not a Ballybowden man or anything like that. I just won the jersey in a giveaway. Before any Ballybowden fans are watching and thinking, how dare you go against there's a reason why it's on the wall and I'm not wearing it. So, but yeah, we will go with Cúilín Crokes.
Yeah, like both are good answers, no question about it. Like Kilmacud Crokes and Cúilín were in the Dublin final last year against each other for a reason. You know, they're two teams that have won the All-Ireland in the last 3 years. You know, 2 of the last 3 years have been won by those two clubs. So it'll be a huge final between the two of them. I personally actually am going to shade it to Ballybowden though on that semi-final against Cúilín, because I just think since Cúilín won the All-Ireland, they haven't been pushed to go to the well the way that they had to when they went on their All-Ireland winning run. And I think if Bowden are in the fire with them, I think Bowden have more hunger to get it done. You know, a lot of the players that were part of that All-Ireland winning team have now stopped playing with the team, like Michael Darmaccauley, like Conor Keeney. They're not, you know, they're key men anymore. It's a very new Ballybowden team. It's a team that want to cut their teeth at an All-Ireland push. And I think if they can beat Cúilín, it would serve as, in my opinion, just as important a win as Cúilin's win over Kilmacud Crokes was last year in terms of giving them that belief that they can kick on and go further. So I'm going for a Ballybowden Kilmacud final, but it's going to be really, really interesting to see how it goes. Anyway, we're going to move on further. Dublin is great asking, Séamus, are you on commentary for this game? I'm unsure yet if I'm on commentary for Sunday, but I know for a fact I'm on commentary tomorrow for the All-Ireland, but for the Dublin LGFA final between St. Sylvester's and Kilmacud Crokes. And that brings me on nicely to talk about that game. That game is tomorrow night in Parnell Park at 7:30. We discussed this before on the pod, so we won't go into as much depth. We did like a full breakdown on the last pod on Thursday, but it's going to be a cracking game. I mean, you've seen like last year's final between the two teams. Kate Sullivan was unbelievable, and Sylvester's pushed Kilmacud in a way that they haven't been pushed in Dublin for so long. And you were looking, thinking, God, Sylvester's here, Sinead Ahern, Kate Sullivan, this is their day, like everything like that. And Kilmacud just found a way to get through it. There's no other way to put it, that their know-how got them through. Their know-how got them through. And to be honest, from being there that day, maybe it's a little bit harsh. Maybe it's because I was rooting for the underdog. But you know when a team fails cleverly?
Yeah.
You consistently fail. Danielle Lawless had the ball for Sylvester's plenty of times, and she's one of their key operators of going from defense to attack, and she's so fast, and every time that she had the ball she was being fouled but not enough to get a free, and definitely not enough to get a card. And the sales manager was right beside me on the sideline, and he was losing the plot. He was like, how can you not see that this is a tactic? Dublin Great says, is that on Dubs TV? It is indeed. It will be live tomorrow night on the Dublin GA website. Do have a look at it, because it's going to be some final. Aaron, I'll go to you first. We mentioned the grain of rice last year between the teams. Now Lauren McGee isn't playing. And I mean, she's worth a bag of rice to Kilmacud Crokes, let alone a grain of it. So could that be a difference, or are Kilmacud just too strong? Because up until this final, especially the semi-final, they walked through Thomas Davis.
Yeah, it's hard to know really. Like they've looked so dominant, they've been so comfortable. As you said, like the last day versus Thomas Davis, they hardly put a foot wrong. The game was over very early, obviously with the 2 goals quite early on. So they were very, very dominant. I think it's an interesting one. Like Sylvester's obviously got brought to extra time the last day. They had quite a lead, and then they were obviously pegged back against Clontarf, I think it was, like going to extra time. So it's a hard one to know. Like I still think Crokes have enough. I do get what you mean. Without having Lauren McGee in there, like that obviously is quite a big sort of player to obviously take out of the Crokes kind of team. And obviously Sylvester's pushing them very, very closely last year. Pushing them like to the pin of their collar, really. It's one of them though where like Crokes would have learned a lot from that as well. At the same time being pushed so close. I know Sylvester's will come in with confidence and feel like they'll have a chance, but I think Crokes, in the areas where it went wrong for Crokes, I think they'll be able to plug them gaps and fill them holes. And I think Crokes overall will still be too strong to get, and getting over the line from what I've seen of the championship so far. I know obviously you're backing Sylvester's obviously to get the job done and look. Yeah, and obviously you were there in the flesh last year. I wasn't, so you're probably a better judge of it, to be fair, than me. But I think from what I've seen and the clips I've seen, I still think Crokes will have enough to do the 4 in a row. But look, I do think it would be great for Sylvester's to get over the line. I don't think they've ever won the ladies football championship, the Dublin ladies football championship before. So I think that would be huge to see them get over the line, and especially as I mentioned earlier, you're having a lot of predictable winners at the minute in Dublin, and I think it would be great to see someone different win. So and obviously Sylvester's aren't too far from where we're based as well. I know they might be a bit of a rival and everything else of Whitehall, but look, it'd be nice to see them get over the line.
Yeah, my cousin Luke, who I started to play on GA pod with, he's a Sylvester's man. So there's a little bit of family bias there and everything like that. But no question about it. Like, it would be great to see a new winner. And on top of that, it would be great to see the likes of Sinead Ahern, Niamh McAvoy still playing with Sylvester's. Like, they're Dublin legends. Like, it would be great to see them get their hands on a county title. But it's going to be hard to move Kilmacud, isn't it, Liam?
Yeah, no, I can't see Kilmacud being beaten, to be honest with you. I still think they're the strongest side in Dublin. And I like the way you phrased it there about, how a team knows how to foul the right way. When a team is so used to winning, they have this sort of there's this mental block in a way for teams that haven't won before, where they're just not quite sure how to get over the line in these types of games. Whereas Kilmacud Crokes, they do know how to get over the line in these types of games. And yeah, look, I've predicted them to do big things this year. And yeah, I think they should have enough anyways. It's great I think it's great as well that it's on a Friday night in Parnell Park as well. It gets its own separate occasion. There's something about, I don't know what it is, even watching the Dublin Hurling final last year on the Saturday night, there's just something about a county final at night time under the lights. I don't know what it is. There's just a bit of
so intense. It's so intense. You're down the sideline, you were like, fucking hell. Like, you had the urge to run out on the pitch and try score yourself. Like, it was just...
Oh, I felt like that in Crow Park last year, let me tell you. But yeah, no, I think Kilmacud should win it out anyways. I think they're still the strongest side in Dublin. I still think they're probably one of the strongest sides in Ireland at the moment. And yeah, no, I think it'd be great, like you mentioned there, if we don't have, I wouldn't say predictable, because I think there's two very, very strong teams, but I think I would agree with you there. I think it'd be great if we don't have the predictable win this weekend, but I just can't see it happening. I think Crokes are just too strong, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think they probably will shade it, but I am still going with the underdog. I am still backing the underdog. And look, we tend to focus in on times where a team fell short and then came back the next year to beat them, like, let's say, Tipperary 2009 falling short to Kilkenny, coming back in 2010 and turning them over. But we tend to overlook times like, I don't know, for example, Galway in the All-Ireland final, first day out in 2012, drawn with Kilkenny before getting the living daylights bet out with them in the replay. Like, we tend to overlook those examples because, it's the big dog winning, it's the favourites winning, and that doesn't tend to go down in history. So there is a chance that Kilmacud just come out and annihilate Sylvester's. I'm not dumb to that. There is a chance that, I think, again, there's only 3 ways this goes. Either Kilmacud win narrowly, Sylvester's win narrowly, or Kilmacud annihilate them. I think that they're the only 3 things that can happen here. Smart Parents 812 here says Dublin Senior Football Championship predictions. I've gone with Ballybowden to shade it against Cúilín and Kilmacud to beat Na Fianna. The 2 lads have gone with Kilmacud to beat Na Fianna, and I've also gone with Cúilín to beat Ballybowden. But we're going to move on now down to Cork, and it's a pity that we don't have Matthew on the pod for this, but probably right as well, because he wouldn't be able to say anything really, because it's about Sarsfields against the Bars, and then in the other semi-final, Blackrock against Middleton. We'll start off with Sars against Finbars. Obviously, last year's defending Cork champions, Sarsfields, had an amazing run, got to the All-Ireland final, just wasn't their day against Nafina, but they had an amazing year, beating Ballygunner, of course, in the Munster final. It was an incredible performance. Up against the Bars, who have the likes of Damien Callan, Brian Hayes, a lot of superb players in there. That's going to be some game. Aaron, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a cracker. And especially after last season, obviously with Sars getting over the line, coming through Munster as well. They obviously, I know Matthew was saying previously, kind of on here as well, it hasn't been smooth sailing for them. I don't think they came through their group in a seeded position, so it's been a little bit tougher for them in terms of coming through it. But yeah, as you mentioned, like some of the players that play for the Bars, and Brian Hayes and the Catalans and a few of the others as well, like they've got some serious players in there as well, some serious talent that the Bars have got. But like, obviously, having not watched too much Cork Championship this year, it's probably hard for me to give an exact prediction. But I don't know though. Maybe with Sars is struggling a little bit, there could be an owl upset on the cards there. Maybe the Bars.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say, because I put 2 and 2 together and realised, looking at the throw-in time, it's on Sunday at 3:45, so we probably won't have Matthew for the weekend review show. So we're in trouble again, boys. Liam, your take on that? There's going to be some contest.
Yeah, absolutely. The two Cork semi-finals, I think, are two absolute crackers. I think you've got the 4 best sides in Cork going at it this weekend. I mean, you have four teams who've all won championships over the past 5 years, which is just fantastic to see as well. It just shows how competitive the Cork Championship is. Yeah, and look, that's the truth. Sarsfields maybe haven't been going as well this year as maybe they have over the past 2 years, to be honest with you, in the Cork Championship anyways. Like against Charleville, I mean, I presume you've all seen the flick by Dara Fitzgibbon, which was unbelievable. If it gone over the bar, then Jesus, it would have been score of the year, to be honest with you. But like, Charleville did well in that game. Like I'd seen a good chunk of the match, saw more of the highlights during the week as well. And like, Charleville were no pushovers. They led by a point at half time. They were going fierce well. It's just Sarsfields had that bit of experience, that little bit of grace that they've had over the last couple of years, and they got themselves over the line. In the second half. Colin McCarthy did well. Jack O'Connor got 5. I think, did he get 4 points? No, I think he got 5 points in the end or something like that. Like, they all kind of stepped up in the second half. But that's the thing. It might do them no harm having not been seeded and getting themselves a quarterfinal, getting themselves an extra game. But like you said there, when you're going up against Brian Hayes, it was probably arguably one of the best. Well, he's one of the best corner forwards in the country. Some would argue he is the best corner forward in the country. He's someone that will have to be tightly marked to the absolute every second of the match this weekend. But I'm expecting a good contest. But I still think Sarsfields, they've been going well over the last couple of years. I still think they might have more to offer than Finbars. I could be very well off in saying that, but I just think Sarsfields might be able to get themselves over the line here. And in terms of the other semi-final, I think Middleton and Blackrock is set up to be an absolute cracker as well. Middleton sort of, I wouldn't say sort of similar, but they're probably maybe not going as well as maybe they'd hope as well. I know, chatting to a friend of mine who's from Middleton, he had no hope coming into the season. Like, he had absolutely no hope that Middleton would even win the championship this year. And now they're 60 minutes away from a county final. And I feel like the win that they got over Glen Rovers in the quarterfinal, especially the position they were in, to get themselves over the line in that type of an atmosphere, that type of a game, was absolutely vital for them. Now, the only thing is, if Conor Lehane doesn't perform, then that's a big, big worry for Middleton. He's their go-to man. He's their talisman. I can remember one of the days last year, he scored 14 points in one match. And ironically, that weekend I scored 14 points, but it was in a junior C match. So I'd like to remember that weekend for the rest of my life, that I was on the same level as Conor Lehane. But yeah, no, if Blackrock are able to manage the threat of Conor Lehane even just a little bit, then Blackrock, in my opinion, should be able to get themselves over the line here. But I have a funny feeling Middleton have a bit of unfinished business in the Cork Championship. They obviously won it in 21, lost it in 23 in the final. And really, when you do look back on it, probably shouldn't have lost to Sarsfields last year. They were very, very good in the first half. Like, I remember texting my friend and seeing the scoreline at halftime, and said to him, Jesus, you're going to win, you're going to walk this championship. And then next minute they lost in full time, and I couldn't believe it. So I feel like they still have something that they do want to say about the Cork championship. But yeah, if I was to be predicting now, I think we're going to be seeing a Sarsfield's Middleton final. I'm going to back Matthew. Hopefully he'll come back to the channel.
Yeah, I'm going with Sars to beat Finbars. Nothing to do with Matthew. I'm going with genuinely, like, I was impressed by their run through to the final last year. Just sometimes it just doesn't go your way, but I mean, they still have unbelievable players there. The likes of Jack O'Connor obviously spring out, but then just the way that they put Ballygunner to the sword when it was going down to the wire like that, I think it was very, very hard to ignore that. And the fact that they're back here when so many big core clubs have fallen already, like the likes of Glen Rovers and everything like that, like they've fallen. Yet SARS are still here, and that tells me that they've unfinished business with the championship. Now, I'm not saying that I think they're going to win it, but I'm saying that the hunger is still there to go again. And that's one of the most crucial questions you need to ask of teams who went so far into the championship but fell short. Are you willing to, kick the tires and go for another road trip? And they look like they are. So I'd probably shade it to Stars. I do think the Bars could cause them a lot of problems, though. And similar prediction to yourself, Liam. I think Blackrock will go for the other semi-final, because I do think you take Lahan out of Middleton. I think that the rest of their forward line is manageable from a Blackrock perspective. And then you add in the fact that Blackrock have Alan Connolly leading their line. Like, he's as big a threat as you get right now in the game. So I'll shade it to Blackrock, and then that would set up a final with Stars and Blackrock, and I'm not going to dare call that just yet. I want to see how they get on against their respective opponents in the semi-final before I predict that. Liam, there's also one game that is jumping out massively on the clubber picks, which we'll come to after. Aaron, first of all, did I get your predictions? You kind of hinted that you might fancy the Bars, but I don't know, did you go for them in the end, or are you going to go with Stars, and then who are you going with, Blackrock and Middleton?
We'll go with the Bars. I think the Bars will get over the line. Yeah, we'll mix it up, and we'll go with Middleton as well to get over the line versus Blackrock. Conor Lahan's going to put on a clinic, and I don't know, he's going to score 15 points in this game.
No.
Okay, very, very interesting. Liam, I was going to bring you to the next fixture, the one that is literally on the clubber picks. Your very own Kilcormac Loughy in the Offaly Senior Hurling semi-final against Birr. That's going to be some game.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's been a strange sort of season in Offaly. I remember I was doing a preview earlier for the match with John Leahy, who'd have coached the club a number of years ago, and I kind of said it to him that I going into the season, I didn't know what to sort of expect with the Offaly Championship, because a lot of people would have seen our club as like the team to beat, and a lot of people would have been thinking, oh, they won't be beaten, for years to come, or it's hard to beat them, whatever. And other people were saying that it would probably be us and Ballinamere back in the final again this year. And then after the opening match day, all that thought went out the window, because we ended up drawing with Belmont. Ballinamere ended up getting a hammering really by Coolderry, and all of a sudden everyone was like, all right, these teams can be beaten. So it's been, for me, it's actually been a great championship, and it's probably done us no harm in a way, not kind of like Sarsfield not being seeded, not topping our group, to be honest with you, and not just going straight to a semi-final, because Belmont now, who are playing Shinrone, the other semi-final in a couple of weeks on Sunday, and Birr, who are playing us on Sunday, they've had 4-5 weeks off with no championship action, which could come back to bite them a bit. Now, I'm sure they got challenge matches in between that, and a lot of Belmont players would have been playing football with Forban over the past couple of weeks as well to keep up fitness, and they've had championship action, whatever. But in a weird way, I feel like because we didn't really perform in the group stages, I feel like having the game against Ballinamere was the best thing that could have happened to us. And we put in a professional performance. We put 229 on the board. Their 317. Their 3 goals came when the game was out of their reach anyway, and it was 2 21-yard frees, which we'll have to defend better, which I do know about that. But like they came at a stage when the game was already over. And look, a lot of people be looking at this weekend thinking, oh, we have the strength and depth, or we should win this game, whatever. Birr are a historically proud club in Offaly. They're 22-time Offaly winners. They're 4-time All-Ireland winners. I think they've won 7 or 8 Leinster titles. They're absolutely no pushovers. And, they have some top-class players across their team as well. They've Ben Miller, who was the fullback for the Offaly under-20 team that won the All-Ireland last year. Owen Cahill, experienced Offaly player. Luke Nolan, underrated player. They've Barry Wheelahan managing them this year, who is a out and out absolute mentality monster. You know, should have won them the title in 2019, and he'd be gunning to win it this year. So for me, it's still a 50-50 game. With the weather as well, it could play a factor. It genuinely could. Now, look, do I think we will get over the line? I do. I'm going to back us to get ourselves to the final, but I don't expect it to be anything like the scoreline that we saw in the game against Baldomere. I think it'll be a lot tighter. I feel like Burr will not be as intimidated in a way by us that I felt maybe Baldomere sort of were. And they're going to have a right crack at us, to be honest with you. So I think it should be a cracking game. Really looking forward to it. But I do think we'll get over the line there. In terms of the other semi-final, Belmont-Shinrone. Belmont played Shinrone 3 years ago in the Offaly semi-final. The score was 22 points to 17 on like the 62nd minute, and Shinrone somehow won the game by a point. Two last-minute goals, which just absolutely sank Belmont. They're, like, for context, Belmont have lost the semi-finals in 2017, 2018, 2019, and again in 2020 and in 2022. Like, they've just had absolutely no luck when it comes to the Offaly Hurling Championship, whether it's 1 point defeats or 2 goals in the last minute, or just coming up against teams that, like Rhinos, who did 3 in a row a couple of years ago. But they're coming up now at a stage where they've their big players back. Oisin Kelly's back after he was in the States. David Nally's hurling out of his skin. Other players like Dara Flynn's playing well for them at the moment. Egan's are playing well. So yeah, they're going really well. And I think if we were knocked out, I'd love to see them win the championship just for their sake. But Shinrone have been hurling really well. They came back from 10 points down against Cúilín, showed a lot of bottle to turn the game around the second half. They have some top class players in their team as well. Killian Sampson is having the season of his life at the moment at centre back for Shinrone. Had a great season for Offaly. So Bailey O'Brien's going well in the forward line. They have Jason Sampson, who was Offaly captain for a couple of years. So if I was to call it now, I'm actually going to back Belmont to reach the final. I think it'll be a first ever Offaly final appearance for them. And the final's on TG Carr as well in a couple of weeks, which is great to see as well. But yeah, I'm going to back Belmont to reach the final, and of course I'm going to back us to get to the final. Hopefully come Sunday evening or Saturday evening, I won't be eating humble pie. But yeah, no, it should be good.
Aaron, looking at the list there, just before I give my final games to look at before we wrap up the show, is there any more that you have your eye on this weekend?
Yeah, well, look, I think the Clare Hurling final definitely deserves a mention there. Like, I think it's going to be a historical game in many ways, because, like, when you look at when both of these two last won a county title, like Cloney Quinn haven't won it since 1942, Aero Guinness haven't won it since 1990. Both are going to have some star-studded players as well. Like Cloney Quinn will have the likes of Peter Duggan, Ryan Taylor, Jack O'Neill, so some very interesting players there. Aero Guinness obviously have Shane O'Donnell within their ranks as well. So I think it's going to be very interesting. I think that's a game that stands out, and maybe another game worth mentioning as well is the Wicklow football final this weekend between Bolton Glass and Carnew Emmets. Carnew Emmets haven't won the Wicklow Senior Football Championship since 1973, and they're actually on for a historic double there as well. Bolton Glass haven't won it since 2020. So two interesting finals worth keeping an eye on this weekend.
Do you have any picks for who you think is going to win?
So for the Clare Hurling final, I'll go with Cloney Quinn, mainly because I think I've said on this show a million times, but and I said it very early on as well. I'm not just jumping on the bandwagon, but I had a lot of people saying to me that they were going to win the Clare Hurling title. I hadn't probably even heard of the club up until that point, in all honesty. And yeah, here they are doing what they're doing. So we'll go with them. And in terms of the Wicklow Football Championship, like it's obviously very, very hard to call and predict. I'll be lying if I said I knew a huge amount about these two. But I do think Bolton Glass, like they've been to a couple of the last finals. And obviously they lost to Tinahely a couple of years ago as well. So they would be the favourite, so I would be backing them. But at the same time, I think when Tinahely beat them a couple of years ago, it was their first county title since the 80s. So there is a bit of a precedent there, maybe kind of allowing clubs to win their first county title in a long time. But go with Bolton Glass to get over the line. And just another game that came to be there actually in the Piershig versus Kilmallock in the Limerick semi-final as well. I think is going to be an absolute cracker. Like I think the Piershig have been to 6 of the last 8 finals or something like that, winning 3 or 4 of them. So like they've been very, very dominant. And Kilmallock have obviously got some, top players and Shane O'Brien and everything else. So That'll be an interesting one. If I had to call it, I still think the Piercing might have enough, you know.
Yeah. No, they'll be very, very difficult to overthrow. I think Kilmallock's slightly on the downturn. I think, is that maybe too harsh? I don't know, but like players like Graham Mulcahy aren't quite at their best anymore, and players like that. So I think the Piercing, though, are on the up. With the likes of Peter Casey, I think it's frightening, the Peter Casey. I still don't think we've seen him at his peak. Gavin has a great one here. A lone derby between Clon and St. Bridget's in one semi and Pierce's and St. Farrell's in the other. Final and Roscommon should be crackers. I mean, if Bridget's and Pierce's get drawn against each other in the final, that is going to be something else. So, I would absolutely be buzzing to see that one take place. Before we wrap up the show, I'm just going to highlight as well 3 huge LGFA county finals this weekend. Starting off, obviously, we have the Dublin final. We have the dominance of Kilmacud Crokes going up against St. Sylvester's. Last year, Sylvester's were so close to beating them. There was a grain of rice between them that day. It was only a point between the teams. Sills could have won it. Crokes are going to be very, very difficult to top, but I think without Lauren McGee, I'm actually going to shade it to Sills to be able to do it, but I could be very, very wrong, but only time will tell. Then on top of that, we have Ballymacarbry going up against Comer Rangers in the Waterford LGFA final. Aaron, obviously you picked Comer Rangers to win Munster. I picked Ballymacarbry to win Munster, so it's going to be very, very interesting to see who wins that one. Ballymac were absolutely unquestioned the dominant force in Waterford. I think what was it, 42 titles in a row. Comer finally turned them over last year. I think Ballymacarbry will be coming with a vengeance, and I think they want to get their crown back. The final one then, Dunshaughlin against Dunboyne. I think out of my 3 to watch, you've got Dunboyne there with the likes of Emma Duggan, Dunshaughlin there with the likes of Niamh Gallagly. Serious Meath star power in both of those teams going up against each other in the final. I think whoever comes out of that shouldn't be slept on in terms of their chances of putting it up to whoever comes out of the Dublin final. I think that's the second most likely then to go on and win Leinster and kick on for an All-Ireland potentially. Obviously, you'd have to beat Kilcare and Clonberne, I think, to do that. But that's what I pick as the 3 LGFA county finals to watch this weekend. Only time will tell how they'll go. But yeah, lads, pleasure again. As always, we have previewed another weekend of GAA action, and we've also discussed the latest of GAA news. Fair play to you for getting back on time, Liam. And yeah, until Sunday's episode, we'll be back with you on Sunday at 8 p.m. Until then, enjoy whatever county game or club games you get to, and we'll speak to you all then.
Instinct.